be in here. I'll be a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah. The brand is Ticonic, isn't it ironic? The designers worked on it to make it iconic. Don't you even start it, I know my lyrics sound like I'm hooked on phonics. Recognize Rob and Geoff and making knives. Half the lies from a passion deep inside. Rhymes, grinds, hypnotized. Geoff's aesthetic is more than cosmetic. It's wild, futuristic, often crazy geometric, yet somehow still organic. The way they flow, feel the flow. Ticonic, they get on it. Balls that know what smooth design should finger flick it or thumb in that shit. But don't you think that you can flip it? There's no flipper, cause Geoff don't like it. Ticonic, won the first one from the new dynamic duo. Two icons that you know, they treat you like the bro. Should've carried small and light, it's an internal fight. How do I decide what to carry outside? Is it warm or cool? And how much of a tool do I need for today? Lightweight or tough, that decision is rough. But with this knife it's simple to say, screw it, let's go throw it all away. Whatever I need, this blade will exceed the compound grind. The duality of the bevels create the perfect balance to cut on every level. Recognize Robin.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome back once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand that you may not be yet familiar with, named Ticonic. First, let's just stop and appreciate how brilliant that friggin' name is. For a knife brand that's obviously going to specialize in titanium folders. How cool is that? All right. Now, it should be no surprise that a name that cool is going to come from cool people. What Ticonic is a partnership between Tuffknives and RS Knifeworks. Geoff Blauvelt and Rob Saniscalchi. Two names that for some reason, when you first look at them written, it screws up your brain and you have no idea how to pronounce them. But both friends of mine, Geoff, I've known for a very, very, very long time. We've hung out quite a bit, and I truly appreciate the way that he looks and approaches knife making. He's always striving to be creative, always looking to do something different. And if you haven't seen his custom knives, you need to go check them out on his Instagram and see that even within the same model, each build that he does, everything looks different. Because he's always striving to do something cool and different and special. And this really is not a huge departure from that. Now, there's going to be some similarities. We're going to talk about that with some other knives that are out there right now, but there's a reason for it. And it's going to be unique as well. And then bringing Rob into it. Rob, if you've never seen the RS Knifeworks Instagram, another one you absolutely have to check out. His grinds are absolutely ridiculous. I'm talking Jim Burke level of grind work. Just insanity. Not only creative, but the execution of those grinds is incredible. So you're taking the artist mindset that Geoff has and the craftsman level that Rob is at, putting it together in a collaboration of designs that I think is a really, really good marriage. We're going to open this up, and the case might look a bit familiar to you. And if it does, yes, that's why. And if you don't know, then I'll explain it a little bit. You're going to get a Ticonic sticker. Not mine, though. Mine's going to go on my car. You can't have mine. And here is the knife. Going to get the microfiber cleaning cloth, which is always a nice touch. Now, let's talk a little bit about the knife, and we'll get to talking about the makers a little bit more a little bit later on. Actually, let's start with the specs. I typically don't get into the specs this early on. However, I think a lot of people are going to be curious, especially if all you've seen is pictures of this knife. This knife looks bigger in pictures than it actually is. This is a small knife. Overall length is 6 3/4 inches. Blade length of 2.9 inches. Yeah, I told you, it's small. Blade stock thickness is 157 thousandths. That's thick. It's chunky. It's beefy for such a small knife. Now you've got a really sick compound grind going on here where you have two distinctly different grinds, and where the primary starts is very, very, very short. And then the thinner section of the blade is the longest portion of the blade. So it's actually going to be a good slicer when you get forward of that intersection. Blade steel is M390. Got a stone wash finish. And they're claiming a Rockwell hardness of 59 to 61. Your handle thickness is just under 1/2 inch, and that's going to be from your show scale to the pocket clip. It's 492 thousandths. Just for reference, if you're not really into all that stuff, 500 thousandths of an inch would be 1/2 inch. All solid titanium frame, titanium backspacer, titanium pocket clip, titanium pivot collar, titanium everything. Your weight, substantial for such a small knife, 3.58 ounces. Not heavy, but substantive. You feel it. You know that when you're holding this, you have something in your hand. The lock style on this, I know it looks like a button lock, but what's getting to be very, very popular right now is this button actuated liner lock. They're calling it a compression base lock because it really is, in essence, the compression lock, right? Because it's a liner lock that you see that's accessed from the top up here. And instead of reaching your thumb or finger in between the frame to unlock it, you're pushing this button, which pushes that liner over. Now, we've seen that before from Vosteed. There's a reason why there's some familiarity here. You have a tip-up right-hand carry only skeletonized milled titanium pocket clip. On my particular version, the backspacer and the pivot collar are going to be anodized in a baby blue. Boy, that thing feels substantial. I'm really glad this finger choil is here because for my sized hand, I need that. Back here, I kind of feel like Glock 26, right? It's just having the pinky dangling off, not quite where I want to be. That feels good. Now let's talk about the design of the knife. Let's talk about thoughts on its performance, thoughts on the grinds, all that kind of good stuff, and where I see the influences. First off, if you're looking at the packaging and you're looking at the knife going, man, this really feels like a Vosteed, you're right. And there's a good reason for that because both Rob and Geoff have collaborated with Vosteed to make similar knives. And if you look at the Ticon 1, it really honestly is a marriage of Rob's design and Geoff's design that Vosteed released. This is the Tuffknives Psyop. This is the RS Knifeworks RS Chaos, which is based off of his Mayhem. So you take the Mayhem grind, you throw it on the Ticon 1, which is on the Psyop blade shape. And it's more or less a hybrid of the two in the handle. And it's using the same type of lock, which Vosteed calls their top lock, which works exceptionally well. Very smooth, very fast. And the main benefit, if you're unaware, to having this system over a standard button lock is you get the ease of a button lock, but you get the detent of having a liner lock or a frame lock. For a lot of people, they no longer will buy button locks because of the very weak action as they go to open that blade, because they don't really have a detent. So a lot of people gave up on button locks for years and years and years. Now we're seeing a resurgence because of the use of nested liner locks and compression locks that are button actuated. So when they decided to form their own brand and meld their designs together into one, it made sense for them to go back to Vosteed, whom they have a wonderful relationship with, because Uedong is a fantastic person. Not only does he own a great brand, but he's excited by the community and the industry surrounding the actual knife making. He loves doing things for knife collectors, doing the things that people ask for, making enthusiast products. And both Geoff and Rob are all about that, man. So they found a manufacturing partner that thinks like they do, and they went with it. And to great success. Like I said, this thing feels substantial. It feels solid. If I can get my hand on it just right. It feels like a little tank. It almost kind of feels like, well, I mean, yeah, it feels a lot like the RS Chaos in the way that you almost feel like you could do anything with it and not hurt it. That you could do ridiculous things that you shouldn't be doing with a tiny little pocket knife. I will say the only negative that I have on this knife is just the size because of my large hands. If I had more regular sized hands, probably wouldn't be an issue. But for me, it's a little bit hard to get to the deployment hole. I have to kind of scoot the knife up in my hand to be able to get to it. Whereas something larger like the RS Chaos, I don't have to do that because it's already in the position that I'm going to be holding it in for me to access that hole anyway. Even the PSYOP is a little bit, just starting to be a little too small because of the placement of that opening hole. So on this one, yeah, I do have to kind of move it around just to kind of find my sweet spot and give myself the right amount of room to flick it just right. Thumb flicking it, not quite as challenging. I think I'm a little bit more dexterous with my thumb possibly. I don't know. But it's nice and smooth, feels good. It's breaking in very, very quickly. When I first got it, there was a lot of tension on the detent, so you could definitely feel it making the track, making the groove into the blade. And now it's smoothing in very, very nicely. Overall, nice balance. And again, look at the thickness. And I want to show you, I do have an appreciation for small knives still. They just have to be configured just right. I'm going to give you a comparison up against one of my longtime favorites, which is the EMP EDC Nimble. This is the Tanto version. And you see they're almost identical in their overall length, with the Nimble just being a little bit taller. This is sleeker and more slender. But take a look at how substantial both of the blades are. Now, where I want you looking is back here, because up here, toward the tip, it looks thinner than it is because they have that very prominent swedge that's being ground in. So you look, there we go. So you look right back here, and you see they're just about the same, the Nimble being just a little bit thinner. I like that combination a lot because now I've got a small, compact, a tiny little knife that takes up no room in my pocket. It's not a burden to carry at all. Yet I don't feel that it's wimpy. I feel like it's got a substantial enough blade that if I had some hard cutting task to do, I'm not going to be afraid to do it. I have quite a number of knives in my collection that are on the smaller stature side that have very thin blade stock, 120 thou, 125 thou, that I'll go to carry those sometimes because I want to carry something small and lightweight, let's say for the summer and lightweight shorts. And I just go, yeah, no, because I'm going over to this place today or that place today, and I know I've got to do some cutting, or I've got to tear this down or cut into that. And I don't know that the knife is going to quite handle that. When I've got a nice thick blade stock like this, I don't really have to worry about that. I have a utilitarian cutter in my hand. The way that they have done the compound grind is interesting. And again, that goes right back to Rob's influence. So what you have is a very thick, flat grind here. It comes down nice and thin, but it's still going to build up fast. So this is not the area where you're going to be doing a lot of push cutting through cardboard. You're going to let it slip up to about there, and then you're going to push cut with the other 2/3 of the blade. Because that's much, much thinner and much slicier. And overall, it's a really dramatic looking, very aggressive looking grind. And I think it looks fantastic. Let's give you again another look at how the lock operates. So when I push this, that pusher is one big solid piece of titanium that's pushing on that nested liner. And the freedom you have with these button lock styles is if you don't want to spidey flick it, if you don't want to flick it with your thumb, if you don't want to slow roll it because you don't want to get strider thumb, you can simply depress the lock and flick it out, flick it back in. And it's nice and consistent, very easy to do. So you've got those options. Now, I told this to both Geoff and Rob, so it won't be a surprise when they hear me say it here, and they both know me well enough to know if I'm going to say it to you in private, I'm going to say it to you in a review. There are few knives that have ever begged for a flipper tab more. I really, 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 really wish this knife had a flipper tab. And I'm not saying I would always use it, but like with the RS Chaos, sometimes I choose to flip it with the flipper tab. Sometimes I flick it. It might even be a 50-50. I never open it with my thumb. But I like having the option. I know Geoff is not a flipper-only fan. He's never really liked just flippers. He's been okay with them, and he's owned many of them, and he's made many of them. But he would prefer a more streamlined look to his designs with a more standard opening method like a thumb stud, a thumb disc, or a deployment hole. Here, you've got all that, but you've also got the flipper tab if you're like me and like flippers. The reason why I'm saying this knife is screaming for it is because of the size. Because it wouldn't matter how I was holding it if I could access a flipper tab. I wouldn't have to move my thumb or move my middle finger or anything else to get into a certain little spot. Even something like the Nimble, where the flipper tab is actually the tang of the blade, it's sticking out of the corner, I can simply pull that back and get it to flip that way. I would love to have that option here. So I would beg Geoff to reconsider, and if there is ever a V2 of this knife, Change nothing else. Everything else on this is done so well. But give us a little flipper tab. Give us a little flipper love. Now, this is made on caged ceramic bearings, which means also you're going to have a ceramic bearing detent. So it's going to be smooth. It's going to be fast. It's also not going to rust internally. So if you're around salt water or you sweat on your knives a lot or something like that, you don't really have to worry about it because everything here is titanium and the major steel components are M390. M390 is nice and corrosive resistant. You know, your bearings inside are safe because they're ceramic. They can't rust or corrode. Let me give you a close-up on that pocket clip because I really, really like this pocket clip. And I'll tell you from personal experience, it sucks trying to design a pocket clip. And it may not seem like it because you're like, it's just such a small part of the design. That's almost an afterthought. That's the problem. For so many brands, the pocket clip is a friggin' afterthought. It's something basic, and it doesn't always flow well with the design of the rest of the knife, or it doesn't function well, it's not shaped right, it doesn't sit in the pocket right. This has everything. This has a complementary design. It looks really, really good against the entire knife. The chamfering on the edges works well with the chamfering on the frame. That matches very, very well. I love the shape of it. The functionality is great because, look, the ramp is done right. Everybody take note. If you manufacture knives, pay attention. This is how a pocket clip should be made. And it's going to sit right in the pocket. It's not going to cant the knife this way or something goofy. It's going to sit in perfect. Also, on top of that, it's not a stupid deep carry clip that you can't get a hold of the knife to extract it from your pocket in a hurry, where you have to rely on a stupid lanyard or something. It's done right. Because they sat down and they spent time and they designed the pocket clip. They didn't just go, okay, well, it needs a pocket clip. Let's just figure out a basic shape. Because neither Rob nor Geoff are that kind of designer. They're going to sit down and they're going to think of what's going to look really, really good and not detract away from our design, or what's not going to cheapen the overall design, and what's going to function well. Where's the placement? How's the angle? How's the length of it? Because some people go way too long on their clips. Some people go way too short on their clips. These are both guys that carry knives every single day. They know what works. They know what goes in and out of the pocket correctly. They know how much tension should be on it. So they know if it's going to be too short and too tight, or if it's going to be too long and too flimsy. And skeletonizing it, brilliant. Love it. Looks fan-friggin-tastic. The jimping on the spine of the blade, it's in a good spot. It's not as sharp as I would like, but it exists. It's there. The effort was put in. There's a little bit of gear-shaped jimping across the back of the back spacer. Which, by the way, I didn't give enough credit to the back spacer yet. That's also a really nice design. Nice and abbreviated. It also supports the lanyard opening. So if you're running the lanyard through, there's no risk of the blade coming in contact with the lanyard. I've had that happen. Custom Striders. Flat face pivots. You guys know I love those. They're a favorite on many of the knives I own, and most of the knives that I design, I have a flat pivot on mine as well because it's just nicer looking, man. It is, just the way it is. So overall, what do I think of the knife? Putting my feelings for the designers aside, I think at $250, it's a steep price for any production knife. Yes, I get that. That's not where we're going here. If you think $250 is too expensive for a production knife, you're on the wrong channel. I think you're getting what you pay for. You're getting a substantial chunk of titanium. You're getting a fantastic overall design that looks futuristic, that looks very, very slick and cool, that operates well, feels substantial and solid in the hand, and has a good performing blade. Good materials all the way around. In my opinion, it's a good way to go if you're looking for an EDC and you prefer a smaller, stout knife. Now, if you want a small, little thin knife, little lightweight baby, they're out there. They exist. Here's the Mini Psyop, another designed by Geoff. This was done by Vostede. It just doesn't feel as substantial. It feels like I could break this when I compare it. This, again, it feels like I'm holding a pry bar. This just doesn't compare. That doesn't mean it's a bad knife for what it is, but you got very thin blade stock. You have thin micarta for the scales. It's lightweight because it's meant to be a lightweight EDC. And if that's the only way you buy your EDCs, you've got a lot of choices out there. If you want something that's more substantial, that honestly feels, again, weight and heft, they really are not a true indication of quality, but it's a perceived quality, right? This feels like it's higher quality. It feels like I should have paid more for this than this. And yeah, that's about double the price. This is the way to go if you want something substantial. If you're looking for crazy, stupid lightweight, then something like this is more up your alley. So I'm being realistic when I'm making these comparisons. Yes, it's a small knife. Yes, it's got a hefty price tag. But it's tough, looks good, feels good, runs good, and it's got some beautiful key details. A lot of small detail work that you're not seeing in knives that cost less. There's nothing wrong with the Mini Psyop, but this clip is in no way comparable to this clip. And yes, that's going to cost significantly more to manufacture, both in the raw materials and in its machining time. So yeah, there's going to be a higher cost associated. That's just the way it is. So forgive my little tangent as I go off on it. Just to suffice it to say, I think it's a fantastic knife from a couple of fantastic guys, launching an all-new brand that I hope becomes very, very successful. And I hope it lives up to its name of being an iconic titanium brand. Ticonic Ticon 1 at $250. That's the price they've got on it. Grab one if you get the chance. They're live on their website. It's ticonic.store. Go check them out.